Zoran Mamdani. Is he a model progressive or a communist disaster? Let's talk the news. Ever since he won the Democratic primary for New York mayor, both Republicans and centrist Democrats have made Mamdani their enemy. Charlie Kirk groups him in with the 9/11 terrorists and calls him a Muslim socialist. The idea that he has anything to do with the 9/11 terrorists is obviously just ridiculous racism, but there's the word socialist. Trump claims that he is a communist, and Democrat Laura Gillen, who is a representative of New York, simply says that Mamdani is too extreme. Now, a lot of people, including debate moderators, have named Mamdani as a socialist, and in these interviews, he will not contradict you if you call him a socialist.
So you're a socialist? What does that
Democratic
mean?
socialist, baby.
But he will contradict you if you call him a communist. Now, I got to be careful about these terms because they tend to mean something different to their detractors than to their supporters. They're basically meaningless these days.
I define it using the words of others of extending democracy from the ballot box to people's lives, of making sure that everybody has what they need to live a dignified life.
Communism in the sense of public ownership of all property and allocation by need and that sort of thing. I have not been able to find any evidence that Mamdani supports that. While he mainly talks in his policies about wanting publicly owned services, he hasn't had anything in his platforms that I found about advocating forcibly nationalizing any industry. However,
But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support.
so the end goal for him is to seize the means of production. He literally wants to seize the means of production. This is not just conservatives calling everything that they dislike socialism. He actually said he wants to seize the means of production. Socialists and democratic socialists have a huge array of viewpoints on whether and how any particular industry should be socialized. So it's tough to know what Mamdani specifically believes here. Some of them believe that only a revolution can accomplish the goals of socialism and that you would need to nationalize private industries essentially at gunpoint. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have advocates of redistribution of benefits to workers via democratic processes like taxing and bureaucracies. But it's reasonable to think that the word seize implies use of force. So the question from me is, by what method does Mamdani want to accomplish this? And with what industries? Some of the answers are contained within his mayoral platform, which at the moment is on his website, which promises the socialization of grocery stores. This is a socialist policy involving public control of food distribution, but one that doesn't involve any seizing by force or otherwise. He also promises free bus fares and no-cost childcare, though he doesn't say how the city would provide that sort of thing. Is it subsidized or do these people work for the city? Either way, there's no seizing or nationalizing of anything going on here. The government is intended to set up parallel competing services or perhaps subsidize existing services. So what he said in that talk about wanting to seize the means of production doesn't actually match any of the things he says in his New York mayor platform. Personally, I'm left with more questions than answers on this one. What did he mean by that? And what further steps would he be willing to take as a self-described democratic socialist? What does he want to seize and by what methods? I hope that we get answers to these questions at some point before the New York mayor election. And there it is. Hopefully the most reasonable take on the internet. See you next time.